You meet someone who feels safe, someone who listens when you talk, someone who doesn't play games or disappear for days without explanation, someone who actually shows up. And instead of relief, you feel something closer to suspicion. You start looking for the crack in the foundation. You start wondering when they'll leave. And without realizing it, you begin testing them. Not consciously, not cruelly, but you test them anyway. You pull back slightly to see if they'll chase you. You create small distances to see if they'll close them. You withhold just enough warmth to see if they'll still stay. This isn't cruelty. It's fear dressed up as caution. And most people who do this have no idea they're doing it at all. There's a quiet pattern that runs beneath the surface of many relationships, and it starts the moment safety becomes available. When someone offers you consistency, emotional presence, the kind of calm that doesn't demand anything in return, something inside you doesn't celebrate, it hesitates. Because if you grew up in a home where love was unpredictable, where warmth came with conditions, where you had to earn approval or brace yourself for disappointment, then safety doesn't feel natural. It feels unfamiliar. And the unfamiliar, even when it's good, triggers an old alarm system that was built to protect you when you were small. The child you once were is still negotiating safety inside your adult relationships. That child learned that love could vanish, that closeness could turn cold, that the people who were supposed to protect you could also hurt you, ignore you, or forget you entirely. So you developed strategies. You became hyper-vigilant. You learned to read the room, to predict mood shifts, to stay just far enough away that rejection wouldn't destroy you. You learned that wanting too much was dangerous, that being too vulnerable invited pain. And now, years later, when someone treats you well, that same system activates. Not because the person is unsafe, but because your nervous system doesn't know the difference between the unfamiliar and the dangerous. So, you test. You say something sharp and wait to see if they get defensive. You cancel plans last minute and watch how they respond. You go quiet for a few days and observe whether they panic or give you space. You're not trying to hurt them. You're trying to find out if they're real, if their kindness has limits, if their patience will eventually run out. Because in your earliest experiences, it did, and some part of you is still waiting for that same ending. Psychologists call this an avoidant attachment response, but that phrase doesn't capture what it actually feels like. It feels like protection. It feels like wisdom. It feels like you're the only one being realistic, while everyone else walks around pretending love is simple. But what it really is, beneath all the logic, is a rehearsal for loss. You're not protecting yourself from future pain. You're recreating the past and calling it preparation. And the cruelest part is that this behavior often pushes away exactly the kind of person who could help you heal. Because the people who are emotionally healthy, who have done their own work, who know how to love without drama or control, those people won't chase you endlessly. They won't beg for your attention. They won't try to prove themselves over and over again. They'll offer you consistency, and if you repeatedly reject it, they'll eventually accept your answer. They'll assume you don't want what they're offering, and they'll walk away, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Meanwhile, the people who do stay, the ones who tolerate the testing, who push through your walls, who refuse to let you go, they're often the ones who have their own wounds. They might be anxiously attached, drawn to the very distance you create because it feels like home to them. They might mistake your emotional unavailability for depth. They might believe that if they just love you hard enough, you'll finally let them in. And so you end up in a cycle where the people you push away are the ones you need, and the people who stay are the ones who keep you stuck. This isn't about blame, it's about pattern recognition. And the pattern is this: you're drawn to what's familiar, not what's healthy. Your body recognizes the emotional temperature of your childhood, and it mistakes that recognition for compatibility. So when someone is calm, when they don't create drama, when they make you work for their affection, it feels wrong. It feels flat. It feels like something's missing. And what's missing is the anxiety you've come to associate with love. Think about that for a moment. You've learned to equate love with effort, with uncertainty, with the constant need to prove yourself worthy. So when someone gives you love freely, without making you earn it, your system doesn't register it as love at all. It registers it as something suspicious, something too easy, something that can't be trusted precisely because it doesn't hurt. This is why you might find yourself more attracted to people who are inconsistent, people who are warm one day and distant the next, people who make you wonder where you stand, not because you enjoy the pain, but because the unpredictability feels like the truth. It feels like what love actually is. And the person who texts you back consistently, who makes plans and keeps them, who says what they mean and means what they say, that person feels almost boring by comparison. Not because they are boring, but because your nervous system has been trained to find comfort in chaos and danger in peace. Attachment research shows that children who grow up with inconsistent caregiving often develop what's called an avoidant anxious attachment style. They want closeness, but they're terrified of it. They crave intimacy, but they push it away the moment it becomes real. And this creates an impossible situation where the thing you want most is also the thing you're most defended against. You end up in relationships where you're always reaching for something just out of grasp, or you're running from something that's right in front of you. In Jungian terms, this is a meeting between your persona and your shadow. Your persona, the version of yourself you show the world, might say you want a stable relationship. You might genuinely believe you're ready for something real. But your shadow, the part of you that holds all the rejected, unprocessed pain from your past, is terrified of it. Your shadow knows that real intimacy means real risk. It means letting someone see you fully. It means trusting that they won't use your vulnerability against you. And if you've been hurt before, your shadow will do everything in its power to prevent that from happening again, even if it means destroying the very thing you claim to want. So, you test. You create little experiments to confirm what you already believe, which is that people leave, that love doesn't last, that you're better off alone. And every time someone fails your test, every time they get frustrated or confused or tired, you tell yourself you were right all along. You don't see that you engineered the outcome. You don't see that you were looking for evidence of betrayal so intently that you missed all the evidence of care. And here's what makes this so painful to recognize. The tests aren't even fair. You're not testing whether someone can love you. You're testing whether they'll love you while you're withholding love from them. You're testing whether they'll stay while you're 1 foot out the door. You're asking them to prove their commitment while refusing to show your own. And no matter how patient someone is, no matter how much they care, eventually they'll realize they're in a relationship where they're the only one trying, and they'll leave. Not because they didn't love you, but because they loved themselves enough to not accept a connection where they're constantly auditioned but never chosen. Therapists consistently observe this dynamic in their practices. They see people who desperately want partnership, but who sabotage it the moment it becomes available. And what they've learned is that this behavior isn't about the other person at all. It's about an internal conflict between the part of you that wants love and the part of you that's terrified of it. And until you address that conflict, until you look directly at the wound that's driving the testing, you'll keep repeating the same cycle with different people. Because the testing isn't really about them. It's about you trying to stay in control. If you can predict the ending, if you can be the one who leaves first,
If you can confirm that people are unreliable before they have a chance to prove otherwise, then you never have to face the deeper fear, which is that you might not be worthy of staying for. That's the belief underneath all of it. Not that others will leave, but that when they truly see you, when the initial attraction fades and the real work of intimacy begins, they'll realize you're not enough. So you reject them first. You fail the relationship before it can fail you. You take the power back, even if it costs you everything you actually want.
Let's be honest about what this looks like in practice. You might pick fights over small things, turning minor disagreements into reasons to question the entire relationship. You might suddenly become critical, finding fault with things that didn't bother you before. You might compare them to past partners, keeping one foot in old relationships so you never have to fully commit to the present one. You might keep your options open, maintaining connections with exes or potential alternatives, not because you want them, but because having an exit strategy feels safer than being all in. Or maybe your testing is more subtle. Maybe you share less about your day. Maybe you stop initiating conversations and wait to see how long it takes them to notice. Maybe you become sexually distant, pulling back from physical intimacy to see if they'll complain or simply accept it. Maybe you make plans with friends on nights you know they wanted to spend time with you, choosing independence over connection, not because you need space, but because you need to prove to yourself that you don't need them. And here's the devastating part. You might not even realize you're doing it. You might justify every action with perfectly reasonable explanations. You needed space. You were tired. You had other priorities. Work was stressful. You weren't in the mood. And all of those things might be true on the surface, but underneath there's a pattern, a slow, steady withdrawal that happens whenever someone gets too close, a way of creating distance that feels like self-care but is actually self-protection. Clinical psychology recognizes this as a form of emotional regulation, but it's a maladaptive one. You're regulating your fear of intimacy by controlling how close anyone can get. You're managing your anxiety about abandonment by leaving before you can be left. You're protecting yourself from rejection by rejecting first. And it works, in a way. You don't get hurt the way you're afraid of being hurt, but you also don't get loved the way you're desperate to be loved. You stay safe, but you stay alone. And this is where existential philosophy becomes important, because what you're doing at the deepest level is refusing to participate in your own life. You're refusing to take the risk that existence demands, which is that meaning requires vulnerability, that connection requires uncertainty, that love, real love, is not a guarantee. It's a choice you make every day, knowing it could end, knowing you could get hurt, and choosing it anyway. But instead of making that choice, you're living in a defensive crouch, protecting yourself from a pain that hasn't even happened yet. And in doing so, you're guaranteeing a different kind of pain, which is the pain of isolation, of missed connection, of looking back years from now and realizing you spent your whole life guarding a heart that nobody ever got to hold. The emotional cost of this pattern is enormous. You end up lonely, but you call it independence. You end up disconnected, but you call it self-protection. You end up repeating the same shallow relationships over and over, never going deep enough to be truly seen, never staying long enough to be truly known. And the tragedy is that you think you're keeping yourself safe, but what you're actually doing is keeping yourself small. You're living inside the emotional logic of a child who didn't have the tools to protect themselves. And now, as an adult with full agency and choice, you're still operating from that same scared place, even though the danger is long gone. What you're really afraid of isn't that someone will leave, it's that someone will stay. Because if they stay, you'll have to let them see you, the real you. Not the version you present on dates or in the early stages when everything is easy and fun, but the version that wakes up anxious, the version that shuts down when things get hard, the version that doesn't always know what to say or how to feel, the version that carries wounds from the past and still doesn't know how to heal them. And you're terrified that when they see that version, they'll realize you're not who they thought you were, that you're damaged, that you're too much work, that you're not worth the effort. But here's what you're missing. Everyone is carrying something. Everyone has parts of themselves they're afraid to show. Everyone is walking around with old wounds and new fears, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll find someone who can hold all of it without running away. The difference between people who build lasting relationships and people who don't isn't that one group is less damaged,
It's that one group has learned to stop testing and start trusting. They've learned that real intimacy isn't about finding someone who never triggers your wounds. It's about finding someone who's willing to work through them with you. Someone who doesn't need you to be perfect. Someone who can see your fear and meet it with patience instead of frustration. But you'll never find that person if you keep pushing them away before they have a chance to prove themselves. You'll never build that kind of relationship if you keep one hand on the door, ready to leave the moment things feel too real. You'll never experience the depth of connection you're craving if you keep protecting yourself from the very thing you say you want. So what does healing actually look like? It's not dramatic. It's not a single moment of clarity where everything suddenly makes sense. It's a series of small, uncomfortable choices where you do the opposite of what your fear is telling you to do. It's texting back instead of going silent. It's saying yes to plans instead of canceling. It's sharing something real about your day instead of keeping it surface level. It's letting someone see you upset instead of pretending everything is fine. It's staying in the conversation when you want to shut down. It's asking for what you need instead of expecting them to guess. It's believing someone when they say they care instead of waiting for them to prove they don't. It's learning to recognize when your nervous system is reacting to a memory instead of a present reality. When you feel that familiar pull to create distance, you pause. You ask yourself, is this person actually doing something wrong, or am I just uncomfortable with how right this feels? Am I responding to them, or am I responding to everyone who hurt me before them? And then, even when every instinct is screaming at you to protect yourself, you choose connection. You choose to stay. You choose to trust, not because you're certain it will work out, but because you're finally ready to find out. But here's the truth that nobody tells you. Healing doesn't mean you stop being afraid. It means you stop letting fear make all your decisions. It means you learn to recognize when your nervous system is reacting to a memory instead of a present reality. It means you start to notice the testing before you do it, and you ask yourself what you're actually afraid of, and you sit with that fear instead of acting it out. It means you practice staying when every instinct tells you to run. It means you let someone be kind to you without immediately searching for the ulterior motive. It means you accept that love is uncertain, that people are imperfect, and the only way to find out if something is real is to stop treating it like it's fake. This is the work, not changing who you are, not pretending you're not afraid, but learning to act in alignment with what you want, even when your fear is screaming at you to protect yourself. It's learning to tolerate the discomfort of being cared for. It's learning that consistency isn't boring, it's rare. It's learning that someone who doesn't make you anxious isn't uninteresting, they're healthy. And it's learning that the person who can love you best is not the one who passes all your tests, but the one you finally stop testing because you've decided to trust yourself enough to take the risk. Healing doesn't make you softer, it makes you honest, and honesty is what sustains real love.
If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. This channel exists to help you understand the patterns that shape your relationships and give you the clarity to build something real. New videos every week. And if you found value in this, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is help each other see what we can't see alone.